For many, many years, research in children has been a taboo. The underlying paradigm was that children are in fact mini adults. So no benefit can come from doing research in children when you have the data in adults, only harm. And even suggesting that you actually do need research in children because they're different was frowned upon as if you were a resurrection of Dr. Mengele from the Nazi concentration camps. That's the power of a taboo. And the proof is in this room, because each of us got sick when we were a child. And I can tell you that each of you got a drug for which there was no evidence. So you're lucky, you're here, you survived. I survived. We have no idea how many children did not survive, because there simply was no evidence. Now the good news is, after decades of talking about it and 10 years of legislative creation, since 2007 only, we have now on both sides of the Atlantic a legislative framework that makes it mandatory to research drugs in children. Every new drug in every new indication. So our children will be fine. But there's another taboo related to this that I want to talk to you about that is potentially even more devastating. This taboo has been around for a long, long, long time, and it's the taboo of research in pregnancy, specifically drug research in pregnancy. Talk about a taboo, because even suggesting that you would do that really sends shivers around everybody's spine. But the problem is that every day women who are pregnant get sick. And every day people who are sick, i.e. patients, want to start a family. The US government estimates that 90%, 9 out of 10, of all pregnant women take a drug during their pregnancy. But where's the data that it works? We don't have that data. 1 in every 1,000 women is diagnosed with cancer during the pregnancy. Not before, not after, during. And doctors have been telling her for decades, Mom, if you want treatment, you should abort. Because we cannot give an anti-cancer drug to a growing baby. And so that happened. Half of all the women with rheumatoid arthritis say they have less children because they wouldn't even dare to do it. And so because of this taboo, women find themselves between this horrific choice of not having a family or the fear of having a baby that may not be fully healthy, or even their own illness not going well. Now, to understand the fierceness of the underlying paradigm and this taboo, we have to go back in time to understand it, to a time when there was a totally different paradigm. And that's not too long ago. About 6 decades ago, 60 years ago, medicine believed that the baby was totally protected in the womb. Whatever mom did could not harm. And that's why you could see even publicities of cigarettes or alcohol. And in fact, some beers claimed it was very good for mom and for the baby. That was the medical belief, the medical paradigm at that time. But that paradigm was about to get violently shattered. 50 years ago, the biggest health tragedy of the last century induced by medicine happened. The end of the 50s, a new drug came to the market, and it was intended for morning sickness in pregnancy. So thousands and thousands of women took it because I can tell you morning sickness is the #1 problem in pregnancy. My mom took it. And then babies started to be born with very, very bad malformations. No limbs or very short limbs. Most of the babies died. But because the paradigm was so strong that this could possibly not be due to something that mom did, because baby was safe in the womb, it took over 10,000 babies before the link was made to the drug. And that, of course, shattered the paradigm, and it swept 180, and the new paradigm became everything mom does will harm the baby, so mom better do nothing. And that's the paradigm we're still in today. Because when a paradigm shifts, the behaviors shift. And so the behavior today is Mom gets advice from everybody what she should definitely not do during pregnancy. And anybody here in the room who's been pregnant, who knows somebody pregnant, you have lived this firsthand. So it's really about the three monkeys. We don't see there's a problem about pregnancy and use of medication. We don't hear about it, and we certainly don't talk about it. But it goes further than drugs. I'll give you an example of the impact of this irrational fear resulting from that broken paradigm. You remember Chernobyl, 1986, the worst nuclear disaster of the last century. The nuclear explodes. More than 2,000 kilometers more south is the city of Athens. In the month that Chernobyl exploded, between 1/4 and half of all the pregnancies were terminated, usually on medical advice. But what you have to know is that the radiation in the air in Athens that month never was above normal. It was less than 1 X-ray, much less than a CT scan, and less than the background radiation noise in most of the places where we live. The European Nuclear Agency estimates that out of that misplaced fear, between 100 and 200,000 babies were aborted in that single month. That's what the lack of data and the lack of knowledge can do. And it's not that doctors don't want to protect their patients. They just don't know the data because there has been no research. Because of this taboo, don't do research. They really want to first do no harm, but then translate that in first do nothing. And if you're a doctor, you also have to protect yourself, because if you tell a woman, don't get children, with your condition on that drug, I wouldn't get children. You cannot get sued for that. But if I tell you, you know what, I think you should give it a go if you really want it. And the drug will probably be okay that is needed for your treatment. If anything goes wrong, I'm going to find myself in court. And so in the lack of data, many doctors take the very conservative route, and they advise women not to get pregnant, or if there's anything to abort. And women, they find themselves alone without this evidence, without good medical support, in a turmoil of contrasting information. And so very, very strange behaviors happen. 1 in 3 women drinks alcohol during her pregnancy. 1 in 5 smokes. 1 in 10 takes antidepressants. And then there's a whole lot of women who deny themselves of the treatments they need because of conflicting results and conflicting information. Now, why do we need to attack this paradigm and put it right? There are many, many reasons. Number 1, the birth rate in the world is declining. We need to take better care of our pregnancies. Secondly, moms are getting older. In many parts of the world, mom is 30 years old by the time she gets her first pregnancy. If you're older, you have more chance of already having a chronic disease like asthma or something else, and you may need a treatment. Thirdly, medicines become better at diagnosing earlier and treating more. Statistics say that the use of drugs in the first trimester of pregnancy has increased by 60% in the last 3 years only. Now, the first trimester is when the organs are formed. So it's pretty important that you take the right drugs. So all of this together is meaning that this problem is getting more and more frequent, and we have to do something about it. We're bringing drugs to Africa to help mothers survive, but they then get also pregnant, and we don't really know what the drug does. So there's a lot to do right now. But there's good news. The good news is things can change, and they can change very rapidly. I talked to you about the problem that 1 in 1,000 pregnant women face because they're diagnosed with cancer. Usually that's breast cancer. And everybody today knows that breast cancer is a fast-growing tumor. If you delay your treatment for more than a month, it may make the difference between your survival or not. Well, doctors used to always tell the woman, it's better that you can abort the baby because this drug works on cell division and the baby is growing, and then we can treat your cancer. And if you don't want that, we would suggest that you hang on till you're about 30 weeks pregnant, because then we'll do a cesarean section and then we'll treat you. But if you're 22 weeks pregnant and you've just had a 20-week scan, that's a real baby. You've seen all the details. It's no longer a fetus. Now somebody's giving you the choice between killing your baby or waiting a full 2 months before you can get treatment. A friend of mine had this happen to him. He's a gynecologist, oncologist. So he gave the woman the horror choice. And she reflected for one moment. And then she said, no. I will have my cancer treated and I will keep my baby. And he said, but I can't do it. Look, this is the European guidelines. I can't do it. She says, I don't care. It's my baby, my cancer, my doctor. And so he sought some advice from his wife, which was very short, because she says, what would you tell me if it was our baby? And next day from his lawyer. Very important to get a good lawyer. The lawyer said, if it's her choice, document it. See her frequently. Remind her every time she's going against what is normal medical practice. But write it down. So if anything goes wrong in 2-3 months from now with that baby, you'll have this very long piece of paper to protect you. And so he called her up and said, I'll do it. But now I have a different problem. I've never done this before. I don't know what to use, which drug. There are like 5 big drugs in breast cancer. So give me a few more hours. And he picked up the phone, he called a few colleagues, and within no time he found 3 colleagues who in the last year had a similar case. And 2 of the 3 had used drug A, and the third one had used drug B. So on phone evidence of 2, he treated the women with drug A. And it went well. So that's not the end of the story, though. It was good for the mother, good for the baby. But my friend kept thinking about it. He says, I must do something about it. This is so frequent. Young women get pregnant and young women get breast cancer. So I need to study this. So he sent an email, social media, to all the friends and colleagues he knew. And he said, if you have a woman in that case, in that situation, pregnant and a tumor, let me know. That's all you need to do. And 9 months later, I'll contact you to see if there's a baby. And if there's a baby, I want to do standardized follow-up for the baby. And so that's what he did. In no time, he had several hundreds of patients. And guess what? 9 months later, he had babies. That's how we know that 40% aborted, 40% went for the cesarean, 15% were like his patient, and 5% were lost because they probably changed their doctor. And the big, big surprise was that 15% who kept the baby and had their tumor treated did dramatically better than the other 2 groups, both in survival, i.e. how many babies and moms survive, as well as in how good they survive, because the babies were followed up. And within a very short time, this got a lot of news coverage to social media, to radio, to television, and the guidelines changed. This story tells us a lot of things, and it mainly tells us the 3 things that we need to do to change this paradigm that still exists in other parts of medicine. Number 1, we have to break the silence. Women need to be empowered to have this discussion. Half of the women with an immunological disease today say that their doctor has never, ever mentioned fertility, family planning, or pregnancy. Not at their diagnosis, not at the beginning of their treatment, not when it was changed. That must become 100% from the doctor's side and from the women's side. Because once you start talking about it, there's a lot of basic things that you can do even without new data. Number 1, make sure that you know you can in fact have a baby even if you have a disease, which many women don't know. Number 2, the most important predictor for good baby outcome when you have a disease is if your disease is stable before you become pregnant. And that may mean that you need to plan. With half of the US pregnancies being unplanned, that's a bit of a challenge. But in most countries, you can plan, and if you get your disease stable for 6 months on the right drug that is safe, you probably will have a good pregnancy. Those are things that we can let people know today. Now, of course, we still also need to get more data, and this is also where social media comes in. We have today the technology to collect data from all over the world. And there's a wonderful TED Talk by John Wilbank about publicly sharing your medical data for the benefit of everybody so that it becomes searchable. Think about all the thousands of women with a disease who are pregnant today. If all they did would be putting somewhere on a central page how their pregnancy went, we would be light years ahead from where we are today in no time. And let's also not forget the men. I've talked a lot about pregnant women, but men are also told not to have children. And we have no idea how male fertility is influenced by many diseases, let alone by drugs that are used. Again, this is very simple to find out with the modern tools of social media. And the third thing we need to do is we need to collaborate. Right now, there are heroic individuals around the world who are already addressing this problem in their clinic. But they are alone in their little center or their hospital. They don't talk to each other. We need to connect them together so that instead of having 20 patients in Bern and 50 in Birmingham and 35 here, we can create one big network where we'll finally have the numbers we need to make conclusions. And equally important, there's a lot of basic science that we can change with each other because there's no commercial gain. We don't know what a placenta looks like in a woman with a certain disease because all we've done is studied normal placentas because we stayed away from it for such a long time. If we do these three things, simple things, breaking the silence, which I call all on you to help, number 2, collecting the data, and 3, collaborating, then the 75 million children that will be born in Africa next year and the 51 million that will be born around Europe, US, India, and China, if their moms, only 10% of these moms are getting better helped, then we are going to help at least 10 to 15 million babies to have a better start in life. And that really is the purpose. Join us to break this taboo such that we can have more healthy babies, more healthy pregnancies. Thank you very much.